Hi, this is Erica Merrill, and I'm the founder of Perfect Legal Video. And I want to welcome Nicole Reeves Lavallee. She owns a family and real estate law firm in the Worcester area. And we talk to her every week about fantastic topics. The information saves people hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases. So listen up. Today, we're going to be talking about a fun topic, always my favorite. I feel like it's a Maury Povich topic, but paternity issues and what they really mean in the real world of family law. And so welcome, Nicole. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm a mother and I'm separated but not divorced from my husband. But then I get pregnant with my boyfriend's child. Whose name is on the birth certificate? My husband or my boyfriend?
Well, it's going to start to be your husband's name, and that's what the hospital is going to tell you you have to put on it. But the reality is that's not the name you want to put on it because it's not the legal father. And obviously, your husband would have to go to the hospital and say, I'm not the father, in order for the boyfriend to actually be put on the birth certificate.
And so, God, these situations, I can't even imagine when you get these that come into your office, what you even say or how you can even keep a straight face in some in some situations. Is it difficult?
Not difficult. It's more of an education thing with the judges because the presumption is that husband is going to be the father. And you have other cases where maybe the child isn't even born, but she's 9 months pregnant and we're getting them the divorce that day. And so it's a lot of wording to the judge. It's a lot of written documentation that supports this position. Both parties need to sign off on it. And more importantly, both parties need to acknowledge it. That's probably the hardest part about this is because what if the husband says, no, I'm the father? I don't care that he's the biological father. It's still my child.
Mm-hmm.
Then you run the problems because he is going to be the father and he is entitled to be the father.
Wow, that is crazy. So, what if I'm the boyfriend and I get a married woman pregnant, but I'd like to have rights and visitation and all of that? Like, how do you get the ball rolling with getting some rights to my child?
Well, the biggest thing is, again, is that husband going to say I'm the father, or is he not going to say I'm the father? If he says I'm not the father, then obviously boyfriend's name would be put on the birth certificate and then he would have equal rights. But mother has to allow his name to be on the birth certificate as boyfriend and has to obviously have the husband sign off saying he's not the father. So if either one of those things don't happen, then boyfriend has no rights and he would have to file a complaint for custody support parenting time or a complaint to establish paternity to prove that he is the father.
That is really scary for that poor boyfriend. Here is a crazy one, and I actually know somebody going through this right now. Somebody's son that I know started hanging out with an ex-girlfriend, and she got pregnant. And I told her, you better make sure he has his name on the birth certificate, and you work with an attorney now because he could lose his rights to the child and not have the kind of visitation he wants. He could get 50-50 if you start now, but if the child is with her 100% of the time, later on the courts may not give him the 50-50 because it's what the child is used to. I mean, is that right?
Well, first we're going to look at is the father's name on the birth certificate. If the father's name's not on the birth certificate, then the father has no rights, period. None whatsoever. So you have to get your name on the birth certificate or you have to go into court and do a complaint to establish paternity. But then the court is going to look at, again, what has the parties been doing? Has this person even seen the child? And why did he wait until this child was 2 or 3 years old before going into court? Now, obviously, if they've been living together and they've been cohabitating and they've been treating themselves as a married couple, whether they're married or not, but what does that relationship look like? Are they that couple, or has it been, Dad, he doesn't even exist. Child doesn't know him. So again, we need to look at that relationship. So certainly, obviously, the longer that there isn't a relationship between child and father, the harder it's going to be for father to exercise any rights. And again, he doesn't have those rights until his name's on a birth certificate.
Oh my gosh, these poor people. Uh, this is the worst. Like, just to me, this is the worst, scariest thing. It's worse even than being the grandparent and trying to see your child, because I mean, this is your actual child, and it's possible that people are going to be able to keep you away from your child just on the technicality of not being on a birth certificate. So, I mean, that is really scary. And this is pretty interesting. This question is it. There are a lot of blended families now, no doubt about it. People are marrying. Both people have kids from other relationships, or maybe they're just moving in and they're living with someone else's children and they're raising them as their own because they're a decent person and they treat the children really well. But what happens if I'm the boyfriend and I break up? We break up and I'm not living there anymore. I don't think that the child is mine, but I get served with paternity and am asked to pay child support. Can I get a DNA test?
If your name is not on the birth certificate, absolutely. The question is really going to boil down to, what does that paternity test say? But in the meantime, guess what? You don't have any rights and you're not going to be able to see that child. So if you're bonded and you say, I want a DNA test, then you have to understand that you may not see that child for 6 months while you're pending the DNA results. So it's something that you need to consider. Obviously, if you think, hey, I'm really not the father, and she told me I wasn't the father when we were together, then that's obviously something that you can bring up to the judge. But know full well that, again, you're not going to see that person, that child, for a long period of time.
Well, what if I would like to continue to see the child, even though I'm not the dad, but I've been living there?
That's a very hard question. That's one of those ones that you don't technically have any rights. Now, I say that, but maybe you, mom and dad, have a child together, and then you have this stepchild, whether you're married or not, but you have this stepchild that you've been attached to, that has been grown up with your child together. Then how does it play in? And so that might be a complaint equity, but the complaint equity is probably going to be for the siblings slash half siblings to see one another, not necessarily for you to intervene. So, very complicated situation, something that we would absolutely need to sit down, go through it in detail. What does that schedule look like? When did that relationship start? What did it take off as? How did it progress? That is so not a one answer question. That's a sit down in my office for 2 hours. Let's have a conversation. Let's figure it out and let's see if you have any rights. Because the simple answer is you may not have any, but you may have some, but it would be limited.
So the last question is, if we look at this another way, whereas I just had my ex-boyfriend's baby and the father says now he wants a DNA test, because you know how people are when you break up. They can be nasty. But you know what? If he's going to be paying child support, I could see that. What happens next?
Well, we're going to ask for a genetic marker test, which is basically a DNA test. And it's done through Department of Revenue, most likely. You can do it privately, but the court doesn't have to accept that one. So you probably want to go through DOR. Problem is, DOR takes DOR's time. So in the meantime, while you're waiting for the test and then ultimately waiting for the results, dad has no rights. He doesn't even get to see the child. Now, again, he might be at the mercy of mom, But mom's going to go, screw you. I told you you're the father. You're a jerk. You're asking for this test. You know you're the father. Why are you being such a jerk? And then she's going to huff and puff, and you're never going to see that child until the DNA results come in. So, there's consequences to those actions. Now, obviously, from a child support perspective, you absolutely want to know, because guess what? You say you're the father, you're on the hook for the next 18 to 23 years. So if there's any doubt in your mind, the time to do it is when that case first starts. As painful as it is, that again, you may not be able to see that child for 6 months or so. The reality is it's a lifetime. If you're okay with, I don't care if it's not biologically mine, it's still my child, then great. But understand that those consequences is child support for 18 to 23 years, and obviously ultimately inheriting from your estate when you pass.
So we've given a lot of scenarios here, and I'm sure that there are literally thousands of combinations of situations that you've seen happen. And I mean, I think the best advice is absolutely see an attorney if you have any question of your paternity, or you need rights, or if you don't want to have to pay, or whatever the case is for you. I know that Nicole's office and her team are very skilled and knowledgeable in these areas, and they can give you the best strategy to get the outcome that you're looking for, and at least make sure you're not paying for someone else's child. And if you want to see the child and it is yours, make sure that you get the time that you want and that you can have that relationship, because it is for a lifetime, and you don't want to miss out on something like that if you can help it. And so, do you have anything that we missed in this interview? I know there's a lot of combinations. You might have some real life examples where you don't say the names or anything like that, but just, or some general advice on what to do in some of these situations, for the audience today.
I think you hit the nail on the head. You need to talk to an attorney. It's absolutely paramount, because whether you're a mom or you're a dad, or whether your name's on the birth certificate or not, you really need to understand what your rights are. You need to understand what your rights are when you're signing that document. You need to understand what your rights are by not signing that document. You need to understand what's going to happen and what the process is going to look like and how long it's going to take, because all of those things are going to have an impact on your ultimate decision. And I think, people also often just go, yep, we're hunky-dory, we're having a kid together, great. Well, yes, but the problem is you're happy together. You're not knowing what your rights are. You're signing this document or not signing this document, and you go about your life for 4 to 5 years, and then all of a sudden the relationship breaks up. And that's really where it goes, well, I could have helped you a lot better had you done this in the beginning. So unfortunately, I hate to say it, but when you're pregnant, that's probably the time you need to come see me. So again, we can kind of gauge where you're at today, where you want to be in the future, and how you want to treat this relationship with this child. Because again, if you see me 5 years down the road and you've done all these things that really don't support your position, it makes it a lot harder for me to support you and to get you the results that you need.
So you heard it here first. If you're not sure about the father of your child, or if you're married having your boyfriend's child, or some other crazy situation that we all know, that is life. A lot of times reality is stranger than fiction. Definitely go see Nicole. She is fantastic at this. And Nicole, we appreciate all of the information that you give us every single week. I know it saves a lot of headaches and a lot of money for those that are listening and need advice in these areas. So thank you again for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And I hope you all have a nice weekend. Thanks again. Bye-bye, everyone.